Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai. Nitai Go Premanande. Hari Hari. Kantra Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava ki jai. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiryet Shautam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhasatam Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be covering Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 6th canto, chapter 12, Vṛtrāsura's glorious death. Hare Krishna. So we'll be covering the very first verse. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 6th canto, chapter 12, verse 1. Shir Uvacha. Evam jihasa dripade hamajao mrityum varam vijayan manyamanaha shulam pragagriya bhayapatat surendram yatha mahapurusham katabu apasu. Shri Rishi Uvacha. Shri Shukdev Goswami said, Evam, thus, Jihasu, very eager to give up, Nripa, O King Parikshit, Deham, the body, Ajao, in battle, Mrityum, death, Varam, better. Vijayat, than victory. Manyamanaha, thinking. Shulam, trident. Prahugriya, taking up. Abhyapatat, attacked. Sura Indram, the king of heaven Indra. Yatha, just as. Mahapurusham, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Katabha, the demon Katab. Apsu, when the whole universe was inundated. Translation by His Divine Grace S.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Shukdev Goswami said, desiring to give up his body, Vṛtrāsura considered death in the battle preferable to victory. O King Parikshit, he vigorously took up his trident and with great force attacked Lord Indra, the king of heaven, just as Katabha had forcefully attacked the Supreme Personality of Godhead when the universe was inundated. Purport. Although Vṛtrāsura repeatedly encouraged Indra to kill him with the thunderbolt, King Indra was morose as having to kill such a great devotee and was hesitant to throw it. Vṛtrāsura, disappointed that King Indra was reluctant despite his encouragement, took the initiative very forcefully by throwing his trident at Indra. Vṛtrāsura was not at all interested in victory. He was interested in being killed so that he could immediately return home back to Godhead. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Tattva deham punarjanma neti. After giving up his body, a devotee immediately returns to Lord Krishna and never returns to accept another body. This was Vṛtrāsura's interest. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, in this chapter, we are discussing Vṛtrāsura's glorious death. So glorious, his death is considered glorious because he is a Vaishnava. And in the previous chapter, we covered the transcendental qualities of Vṛtrāsura, where all the demons fearing that the demigods are going to kill them were fleeing from the field. He called them, Muchi, Namuchi and so many other commanders, he was calling them that you should give up your life on the battlefield, then you will get a higher position. And if you become victorious, of course, you will enjoy all the, spoils of the war or battle. So, as well as the kingdom that goes with it. So again, and at the same time, he rebuked the demigods that you should not attack a fleeing enemy who fears for his, life. So he was chastising and he was so fearful. He said, if you are really a warrior, fight with me. And just by looking at his attitude, many of the demigods, they fainted. And Vṛtrāsura started trampling. And King Indra, at that time he attacked. He threw his club at Vṛtrāsura and what happened? Vṛtrāsura very easily caught it with his left hand. In India we say, "Baएं हाथ का खेल," it's a game of the left hand. With the left hand you can do anything. It's so easy. So very easily he caught it with his left hand and then used the same club to strike Airavat, the carrier of Indra. And Airavat retreated back 14 yards. And when that happened, Airavat fell and Indra, by his nectar-producing hand, he touched Airavat, giving him, relief. And then Airavat got up and Indra, he took up his thunderbolt. But why didn't Indra use his thunderbolt? Because there was a fear. I threw the club, he caught the club. If I use thunderbolt, what if he catches it, right? So he is fearing to use thunderbolt. What if it fires back on me? Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gauratai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai. So he is very fearful at this time. And he was already very reluctant before coming to this battle. And when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, when he revealed to Indra by giving him this boon that you should approach Dadichi and, from his bones, Vishwakarma will create this thunderbolt, Vajra, that you can use to kill Vṛtrāsura. At the end, the Supreme Personality of Godhead revealed to Indra that actually Vṛtrāsura is not jealous of you, he is not envious of you. And he is a great devotee. So, you have nothing to fear. And he is giving the solution to kill, through the weapon at the same time. So Indra, having heard, Lord's words, he's like, oh, he's a great devotee and I'm supposed to kill him? So he was already reluctant. And on the request of demigods, he had agreed to go to the battlefield. So this particular aspect is in the Padma Purana and Vishnu Purana. It's not in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So I'm just, bringing those references. And on top of that, he's a great warrior. So he's not just faced with a Vaishnava, he's also faced with a Vaishnava with a great spirit of fighting. And he's reluctant to use his thunderbolt, because in both ways, he realizes that it would harm him more than Vṛtrāsura. If the thunderbolt is effective, then he would be able to kill Vṛtrāsura, which of course is the case because it is non-different from Lord Vishnu. It's endowed with the bones of Dadichi who are endowed with the Narayan Kavach, the power of Narayan Kavach. And Narayan Kavach is non-different from Lord Vishnu. So here he is in this dilemma. So if we have to compare, the deaths of three kind of personalities, and sometimes when we refer to this, that Indra also was literally, he had that, experience of death, means of defeat, and to a warrior, Apman, the defamation is worse than death. So here, he was thinking that I would be defamed for having killed a Vaishnava. Such a big, sin I would be performing. So, and then Dadichi died to give his bones on Indra's request, and Ashwini Kumar, represented Indra in this case. And then Vṛtrāsura is going to die in this chapter. So if you have to compare these three kind of personalities, what kind of experiences they are having, Rishi Dadichi, he's feeling, blessed that Lord Vishnu has requested, Indra to ask for my bones. So it's a humbling to Indra, because Indra had previously threatened Dadichi that if you give this Brahma Vidya to Ashwini Kumar, I will cut off your head. And he had actually done so. But it was the head of a horse that got cut off, and Ashwini Kumar placed his head back. So Dadichi didn't die at that time, but then willingly Dadichi, meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, he gave up his life. Then here Vṛtrāsura death is being discussed, who is ready to die on the battlefield. And who's telling this? Who's narrating this? Shukdev Goswami is narrating it to Parikshit Maharaj. And this is something Parikshit Maharaj can relate to. Because Shringi had given this, curse. He had said that after 7 days, this king Parikshit would die. And King Parikshit had given up his kingdom and everything, and he had come to the bank of Yamuna, which is Ganga in this case, and he was fasting till death. And Shukdev Goswami had appeared. So this is, Lord's mercy is there, that when he was in the womb of his mother, Parikshit Maharaj was in the womb of Uttara, his mother, at that time, Lord saved him, so that the future, the descendant of Pandavas could be born, the son of Abhimanyu, who was son of Arjun. And at this particular moment, when Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam should be revealed, so that was the reason of his death. Like he was approaching his death, he was waiting for his death in 7 days. And this is near the middle of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, third or fourth day, that this is being discussed. And he's saying, oh, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He's willing this. So Dadichi gave his life. Vṛtrāsura, realizing that Vajra has the power endowed by Lord himself. So surely he's going to die. But he is feeling very blissful that Lord had to take a step to come to me. When we take one small step, Lord takes 10 steps towards us, we keep saying. And our steps are puny steps, right? When we take one step, Lord takes 10 steps. And we already know that Lord can cover the whole universe in 3 steps. What can He do in 10 steps? So all we have to do is just raise our hand and chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that's a simple step to take. So here, Vṛtrāsura is feeling glorified. And Indra is feeling very reluctant, because no matter how he acts, it's going to fire back at him. So he's in this state. So Vṛtrāsura is saying the attitude of Indra that he's not ready to fight, starts preaching to Indra. And Indra is surprised. Means he had heard that Vṛtrāsura is a great devotee, but he is experiencing, and Vṛtrāsura is preaching on the battlefield. And what is the cause of Vṛtrāsura's fearlessness, if I was to ask? Why was he so fearless? He knew that death is right in front of him. Yes, he was self-realized. He realized that not a leaf can move without Lord's will. So Lord has willed it. Lord has provided, this particular media for him to go back home, back to Godhead, and he was very happy. And he was fully aware that everything that happens in the world is actually blessed by the Lord. This sometimes is surprising to the materialistic eyes. Before coming to Krishna consciousness, I had some of those experiences myself. When I was after having passed college, I was looking for a job. And I was going for an interview, and this interview, there was only one position open. And I was sitting, and the next candidate was sitting with me, just 2 of us. And this candidate was IIT Delhi topper. I was also an engineering IT student, but he's a topper. And I had already been admitted to MTech at IIT Bombay. And I was contemplating, should I go for this job or should I be going for MTech? At that time, it was more of a thought that, I think I'll end up doing MTech because he definitely has the job, right? And we went through the interview. And it was to my surprise that after the interview, I was the one selected. And when something like this happens, right, you get a little puffed up. A little bit, just a little bit. So I was always surprised. And one of the interviewer was my boss. So after 3 years, I somehow mustered the guts to ask him, there was this candidate who was IIT topper. And I'm just, from a state university. Why did you select me? And he's like, oh, that was very easy. And I was surprised. How could it be very easy? It should be very difficult. You're selecting a less qualified person. According to me, that's what my understanding was. He said, we knew that as soon as we'll select him, in 6 months he will leave to US. But if we select you, you're going to stay for at least 3-4 years. Now when I heard that was very humbling. So I realized that it was not my qualification that mattered. It was the perception that matters. So sometimes how people perceive you matters. And he was very right in saying, because in 3.5 years, I left for US. So I was there for 3.5 years. But then I believe, somehow I felt that I was humble, yet at the same time I realized that it's time for me to leave for US because he just revealed it to me. So when someone reveals some information like that to you, it may be humbling, but it also is a path to the new door. And so my boss, he came to US before me, and afterwards I visited him. And he was like, so glad to see you. What took you so long? So again, very humbling experiences sometimes we have in our life. And so here, and also Srila Prabhupada, he used to tell about a story that there were two candidates who went for an interview. The first candidate, he came in, so again he was interviewed, left, and then the secretary was observing this interview, and then the second candidate came in. And he came in, he had mediocre qualifications and so forth. And he was interviewed, and then he left. So now the secretary asked, who are you going to select? He asked his boss. The boss said, the first one has all the qualification that we are looking for. However, when he came, he didn't close the door, he didn't ask for permissions and so forth. He was not very polite. The second one, however, was very polite. He asked for permission to come inside. He closed the door behind him. He greeted very nicely. He sat down very humbly, and then he had mediocre. And I believe that he would gain for the qualification when working on the job. He's very sincere. So we are going to select the second one. So here the lesson is, it's not, what you have. It's how you have it. What's your attitude? Your attitude of gratitude, that is paramount. And that is taken very seriously and very easily observed. So here, Vṛtrāsura has the attitude of a Vaishnava. He is very blissful, and he is, in the end of 11th chapter, this is his, this is described as the sum and substance of devotional life. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport. When Vṛtrāsura is preaching to Indra, he's also expressing what he's expecting, right? What he's desiring. So it's not that, you become self-realized, you become desireless. That's not selflessness. Selflessness really means that you're not thinking about yourself. You're putting others first and the Supreme Personality of Godhead first. That's what selflessness means. So he is praying, Aham hare tava pade kamula dasanudaso bhavitasmi bhuyah manaha smritasu patir guramste granit vakakam karotu kayaha. So he's saying, Aham, I, Hare, Lord Shri Krishna, O my Lord, Tava, of your Lordship, Pade Kamula, whose shelter is only your lotus feet. Dasanudaso bhavitashmi bhuya. Dasanudaso, the servant of the servant. Bhavitashmi, that's what? When shall I become? So he's praying that way. Bhuya, again. So it's not that he was not, he's saying again. Manaha smritashmu. So, when will my mind remember the attributes of your Lordship? Oh my Lord, of my life. Gunan te granita vak karma karotu kayaha. So, when will I chant? When will I speak about these glories of yours? When will I act in your service and, perform various devotional service with my body? So the translation by Srila Prabhupada is, O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes. My words always glorify those attributes and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship. Hare Krishna. So he is very nicely expressing that what he wants to engage in. Yet at the same time somebody can say, but wait a minute, he wants to engage, what isn't that hypocrisy because he's on the battlefield and ready to fight with Indra? Well, that's his prescribed duty. And we talked about it earlier. Karmane vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma fetu phala hetur bhur mate sango asatva karmani. So, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that you have the right to perform your prescribed duty. Now, the word karmanya is referred by Srila Prabhupada as prescribed duty. So we are born under the influence of various modes of material nature. and based on our nature, we should act accordingly. So there are prescribed duties for the body to be performed. And yet at the same time, he is also saying the same word, Granita vaka karma karotu kayaha. And that karma in that verse is translated by Srila Prabhupada as, devotional service. Service in the service of your Lordship. In the activities, when will I perform the activities? In service of your Lordship. So again, Srila Prabhupada revealed one of the greatest, secrets. That is not what has been said, it is why it has been said. What is the meaning, the context? The word may appear to be the same, right? So as a Atma Ram verse again, the word Atma. And then we see at different places, Atma has been referred to me in mind sometimes, referred to me in body, sometimes referred to me, the soul, the living entity, and sometimes also referred to me in a combination of these. So it's very important to understand the context where it has been said and what it really means. So sometimes facts are revealed, yet at the same time it is painful, right? For somebody that Lord has sanctioned. Why would the Lord sanction death for me? Sometimes people have this doubt. And there is a very nice story Srila Prabhupada, used to tell about a Nawab. In this Nawab in Lucknow, he was very rich, and he had servants who would take care of his house. So one of the servants, when he was cleaning the chandelier, one of the crystal came loose and fell and made a sound. Now this Nawab was sitting in another room, and he heard this sound, and he came running. And now the servant was like, I just spoiled his chandelier, this costly chandelier. By destroying this single crystal, now it's out of its shape. It's incomplete now. So he was shivering. And Nawab said, oh, that was beautiful sound. That was so melodious. Throw again another one. And the servant is like, what? He wants me to drop another one? He's like, yeah, drop another one. So he drops another one. And he's like, he listens to the sound of this crystal crashing on the ground. He's like, oh, very nice, very nice. Throw another one. And the servant is throwing another one. And he likes it. Very nice, very nice. And so it goes on till all the crystal from the chandelier have been shattered. Now somebody can say, it's so painful, right? There was fear in the mind of the servant in the beginning. But why did he do that? Why did the Nawab do this? Because he liked it. Right? So, does the body belong to us? No, it belongs to the Lord. It's very interesting that sometimes when we associate with the body, we believe that this is ours. And when Lord takes it away, we say, wait a minute, why did you take ours? When He gave us something, no, it is only a media. Sometimes it is also said that our kids are through us, they are not of us. So as parents, we have to realize that we are only the media. We only provided the initial ingredients, and we didn't provide it. It was material energy who provided it, on the order of the Lord, the necessary ingredients so that another living entity may have an opportunity to take birth in this world, in this material world. So our kids are through us, they are not of us. That's an important aspect. And so Vṛtrāsura, he is looking at that the Lord has taken this step for him to go back home, back to Godhead. So he is completely in bliss. Yet at the same time, he is surprised that Indra is not satisfied with his result. Because Indra is reluctant to fight. He doesn't want to attack Vṛtrāsura. He is holding the thunderbolt. And Vṛtrāsura tells him that don't worry, this thunderbolt is so powerful, it will definitely kill me. And Indra is reluctant because he's double guilty. First of all, and of course we already heard when Twashta chanted the mantra to make Vṛtrāsura appear, he chanted the mantra slow, so changed the meaning of the mantra to say, enemy who's born a person whose enemy is Indra. So let there be such a personality, appearing. So Vṛtrāsura appeared because of that, whose enemy is Indra. He is not Indra's enemy. Yet at the same time, in the translation, we see enemy of Indra. This is to identify that was the intent, not the effect. Means that was not the true reality. And so in this particular chapter, so it's very interesting that chapter 11 was so melodious. We spent a long time discussing that chapter. And here we'll be looking at, I believe, 4 lessons from this chapter. So in chapter 12, this is where Shukadeva Goswami is revealing that Vṛtrāsura has agreed to get the death, and he's preferring death better than the victory. Why is he preferring death better than victory, if I was to ask you? Because it's giving him higher destination. Victory would leave the person in this material world, but by getting death, he will be able to return back home, back to Godhead. Which one is better reward? No question. Going back home is the goal of life. So of course, his goal of life is to always serve the, dasanu daso, bhavitashmi bhuya. So he wants to serve the devotees and engage in the devotional service of the Lord. So the first lesson we'll be here learning about is behavior. Like, how do people behave differently in different situations? So this was actually from the previous chapter. There are actually 5 lessons from this chapter. First is the prescribed duty and devotional service, they go in parallel. Here devotional service is priority. Second is, a devotee is in constant challenge. He is constantly challenging. So sometimes people may confuse this word challenge with conflict. He's not in conflict. He's very much focused on his target. A devotee is focused on his or her target. And what's the target? The target is for self-improvement. When a devotee is challenging, he's not challenging another person, another living entity. He's actually challenging himself to become better than what he was in his past. That's the challenge. So when we chant, we try to chant more attentively than before. Just by raising a hand and chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We try to do it better than we have done before. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai. Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Then the third lesson is the 3 types of actions. First is prescribed duty. Second is capricious or whimsical actions. And then the third one is inaction, no action. And then the 4th lesson, of course, of these, we should always choose prescribed duties. We should be motivated. Karmane vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So we have the right to perform our duty, Lord says to Arjuna, that you have the right to perform the duties, but you shouldn't be attached to the fruit of your labor. You are not entitled to the fruits of your labor. And then there are 3 responses to various kind of energies that come in our direction. Right? When we are interacting, during those interactions, what we are receiving, we can either decide to react to it. So if we hear someone saying nice words, we may immediately smile. If we hear someone saying harsh words, we become furious. That's reacting. And when no one is talking to us, we are not talking to anyone. That's reacting also. Or the second type of transformation that we can do, response we can do to others, is inaction. Right? We just absorb that energy. We're just keeping it in ourselves. We are not letting it out. What's going to happen? We will become more morose inside. Outside we are keeping calm face, but inside we are burning. And it is said chitta. This is my 8th grade in Hindi class. We heard the teacher said chitta and chinta. There is only a difference of 1 dot. Chitta means the fire of fire, at the time of death. And then chinta is worries, and anxiety. They both burn. However, chitta, at the fire at the time of death, means again the fire, only burns the body, while chinta burns you alive. Right? And so it's worse because you actually go through a lot of negative emotions. And the third response to energy is to transform it. You take the same energy and then you transform it with your positivity, your outlook to life. And of the three responses, which one should we choose? We should choose to transform the response in a positive manner. And then the fifth lesson we'll learn is we should focus on our goal, going back home, back to Godhead, and yet not ignore our prescribed duties. Because we have some duties, so we should not give those duties up. So those are the lessons. So here Vṛtrāsura, after his finishing his preaching, he's preaching to Indra and he's inciting Indra. And then Śrīmad Goswami said he picked up his trident and he threw the trident at Indra. And seeing that the trident is coming, Indra, who's more motivated by, fear or the result in this case, immediately breaks this trident into pieces, small pieces, with the help of his thunderbolt, who was much more powerful than the trident. And having broken with the same thunderbolt in that particular single attack, he also cuts off the arm of Vṛtrāsura with which he had thrown the trident. Yet at the same time, he is not attacking further. Vṛtrāsura, seeing he is not attacking further, continues to, go in his spirit of fighting. What does he do? He picks up a mace and attacks Indra again. And this time, because being struck by the mace, Indra's thunderbolt falls down. So practically Indra is defeated on the battlefield. His weapon is out of his hand and he is an open target for Vṛtrāsura. Yet at the same time, Vṛtrāsura does not attack. Now Vṛtrāsura had already shown this behavior before, when he had attacked with Indra's own club, Airavat, and Airavat had fallen back 14 yards and fallen on the ground. He did not attack again with the club. He refrained from attacking because he sees that his enemy is, armless. He's not in a position to fight. And at that time, Vṛtrāsura again incites. And at that time, once again, as the weapon has fallen, Vajra has fallen, the thunderbolt has fallen from the hand of Indra. At this particular time, Indra is ashamed, right? He's like, I'm practically defeated. Yet Vṛtrāsura is saying, oh Indra, pick up your weapon and fight. He's inciting again. And so, at that time, Indra is wondering, this is a demon I'm fighting, right? Vṛtrāsura is a demon I'm fighting, and he's a great devotee. How come he becomes such a great devotee, right? Sometimes it's like so surprising to people. And they're like, how could this person do so much, amazing feats? Those doubts arise. And at that time, Indra remembers, who does he remember? Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj. They were also Daityas, descendants of Diti. Yeah, and they were great devotees of the Lord. Remembering them, he smiles. He picks up his thunderbolt and is ready to fight. So it's also a lesson for us that, yes, we should engage in devotion service, yet at the same time, we should not forget our prescribed duties. It's the same lesson as the fifth lesson that we have in this particular chapter, because it all connects and comes back to the original point. That our purpose is to engage in the service of the Lord. And the very simple process Srila Prabhupada gave was how to initiate is taking that first step of chanting the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. So, here, Indra, he picks up his thunderbolt and he attacks Vṛtrāsura. And Vṛtrāsura is attacking with the mace. At the same time, he cuts off the other arm. And at that time, it is identified that Vṛtrāsura, his both arms have been cut off, and the blood is profusely coming out. And he looks beautiful, as a mountain whose wings have been cut off. Now this is very much in contradiction, because, how could he look beautiful? He would look gruesome. But he looked beautiful as if a great mountain. So sometimes we look at great mountains, right? And we say, oh, they are so beautiful. But we forget that these mountains, as given in the scriptures, once upon a time they were flying. They are living entities, right? And they had wings and they could fly. But they performed sinful actions and offenses that their wings were cut off. And they became stationary, immovable objects. So it's very important to realize. So now Indra, if you see his behavior, he's reacting every time. When he was attacked and the thunderbolt fell off, then he again picked it up, and when Vṛtrāsura is attacking, then he's attacking again. And at that time, Vṛtrāsura, he increases his size, he puts his lower jaw onto the ground, and he opens his mouth. He's gigantic. Vatra means one who can cover the sky. And he's showing it with his attitude. And he immediately swallows Indra. And all the demigods, they see Indra being swallowed by Vṛtrāsura, they say, alas, alas, what a calamity. Previously they were glorifying, like, what an amazing warrior this Vṛtrāsura is. And now their leader is gone, so they have practically defeated. And at that time, thinking that he has killed Indra, Vṛtrāsura goes in meditation. And he's meditating on what? On the lotus feet of the Lord. Because Lord has said in Bhagavad Gita, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nasatra samshaya. So Antakale cha mameva, at the last moment of his life, one who remembers me, so at the last moment of one's life, one who remembers me alone comes back to me and does not take birth in this material world. And I know it's breakfast time. We are all anxious to have prasadam and feeling that yearning for that yummy prasad. Prasad means mercy of the Lord. So there is another verse that goes hand in hand with this verse. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Yum yum. You can relate to it in English. Vapi smaran bhavam. Tajad anta kalevram tam me veti kanteya sada tad bhava bhavita. So as one thinks, at the last moment of his life, whatever they are thinking, such a destination they attain. And we see those examples. Puranjan, he was thinking of Puranjani. In the next birth, he becomes a woman. Right? Bharat Maharaj, he was thinking of that deer. He took care, he saved when he was newly born. So because at the last moment of his life, he was thinking of deer, he became deer. And now Vṛtrāsura, he is thinking of Lord Sankarshan. So what does he become? Don't tell me he becomes Lord Sankarshan. He becomes godly, he goes back home, back to Godhead. So when, at the last moment of our life, we remember the lotus feet of the Lord, we attain those lotus feet of the Lord. So that is the destination. It's not that we, whatever we think, we become. So we think of God and we become God. That's the misinterpretation, right? Use it in the right context. And sometimes, personalities like Putana, how wonderful it is that she was so much meditating on the Lord at the last moment when the Lord was sucking away her life from her body, that she got the position equivalent to Mother Yashoda. Because she had nursed him. She had come with that thought, and even that thought to the Lord. So Uddhava says, whose shelter can I take? Apart from this Lord, who even to Putana, who was Abhyacharani, who was unchaste and unfaithful, she attained the position of, he gave her the position of his mother. So such wonderful is the Lord. And as Vṛtrāsura is meditating, Indra, who was very powerful and who was blessed by the Narayan Kavach which he has received from Vishwarupa, brother of Vṛtrāsura. And also he had Vajra, who was endowed with the same power of Narayan Kavach. So he did not die in the abdomen. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur reveals that it was because Vṛtrāsura had gone in meditation thinking, there is no reason for me to fight anymore. I have killed Indra. So let me just focus on the lotus feet of the Lord and go back home, back to God. That is in meditation. And taking advantage of that meditation, Indra, using Vajra, comes out from the abdomen of Vṛtrāsura. And he cuts off the head of Vṛtrāsura. So just he had cut the head of Pak and others when there was fight between demigods and demons after the Samudra Manthan, right? The churning of the ocean. So similarly, here he is cutting off, and he is using Vajra, which is that's the most powerful tool, right, weapon at that time. And it takes him how long? 1 whole year. 1 whole earthly year. The amount it takes for the luminaries to go around the sun once, which is a 1 whole year it takes, and he is able to kill Vṛtrāsura. And at that time, all the kettle drums and comes out, and all the Gandharvas and Apsaras, they are dancing and singing and glorifying the victory of Indra. But who has really won? The real victory is that of Vṛtrāsura. And who has really lost? Because Indra is still in this material world, he has really lost. And now in the next chapter we will hear how Indra is feeling that I have killed Vṛtrāsura, who was a Brahmana. So the reactions are following me, and the reactions chase him, and how he tries to save himself. And what happens to the demigods while he's gone? We'll cover some of those aspects in the next story. So in this chapter, we learn some great lessons, where we learn that yes, we should constantly engage in devotional service, but not leave our prescribed duties. We should perform our prescribed duties. We are constantly seeking, devotees are constantly seeking to improve themselves. So again, the only limitation we have is us, this body, the material senses. So we should try to overcome these senses and try to engage in devotional service. And always try to respond in a positive manner to all the situations. So those are the lessons we covered today. Any questions or comments? Gantra Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Kori Vaishnava ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees. Hare Krishna.